teach Right Start Math Level 4. My name is Eve Hullett, and I'll be walking through this webinar with you today. Some quick information. Make sure your sound is muted. And if you have any questions, you can just use the chat box. Okay, placement guidelines. Who belongs in level F? Okay, if your student knows how to add and subtract fractions, they can convert between improper fractions and mixed fractions, factor numbers into primes, understand simple percents, and understand decimals to 2 places, then they're ready for level F. If you're not sure and you're wondering, okay, maybe they should really be in level E, then what we need to find out is, can they add and subtract simple fractions already? If not, then they belong in level E. The other students who belong in level E are those who they really don't have a concept of percentage and or decimals to 2 places. And so we can use this objectives form. It's actually online under resources. You can pick the level and look at sample pages. And so one of those sample pages is the objectives for each level. And so we can look in here and see the arithmetic concepts that are covered. We don't need to worry as much about the non-arithmetic concepts when figuring out which level to place your child in. We really want to focus on these here. And so you can kind of go through and see, okay, are these the concepts that my child needs to be working on this year or not? And so this is a really helpful guide for placement as well, if you're not sure if they're kind of in between. Okay, so if you know that your student doesn't need to be an E, but maybe you're wondering, should they go on to G? The students who know how to add, subtract, multiply, divide, and convert fractions and decimals and understand square roots and exponents, those are the students who could go on to level G. Okay, what if you have an older child? Are you behind if you're going into level F? You know, it seems like if you start level A in kindergarten, level F would be your typical 5th grade year. Here's the deal. You can't build on what your child doesn't know. We really need to teach to the child's level. And so if you have a 7th grader, but as far as their math, they're really more at the 5th grade level, then we need to teach where they are so that we can build confidence and understanding, and it's not just this shaky mess that ends up falling down. Okay, so let's map it out. Suppose we have a 13-year-old who's in 7th grade, and we look at the objectives and we're like, you know what, level F really is the next step for them. So we'll do level F for 7th grade, level G for 8th grade, and they're on to algebra by 9th grade. They're right on level. Okay, what if we have a 15-year-old? They're in 9th grade, they're starting high school, they are just not ready for algebra yet. They really need level F to get them ready. So we do level F. We do what's best for our child at that time, and that's really the benefit of homeschooling. And so we do level F for 9th grade, and then they're ready for algebra by 10th grade. We're going to go ahead and skip G at this point because, again, we're in high school and we want to go ahead and move on to algebra. And they're 1 year behind, but they understand what they're doing. Okay, so we know our child needs to go in level F. What do we need to get started? You need your book bundle, and so this will have your lesson book, your child's worksheets, and appendix pages. The appendix pages are actually in the back of the lesson book, but the appendix pages that you get in your book bundle, we've already made copies for you, so you're ready to start teaching. If you need extras, they're in the back of your lesson book. And then you need your math set. Your math set is actually what you will be using to teach your child. The lesson book just shows you how to use it. And so this has all your manipulatives, your card game book, your decks of cards, geometry solids, drawing set, everything you need for level F. And just as a side note, this is the exact same kit that if you have younger children coming up, they're all going to be using this these same manipulatives as well. Okay, so again, if you go online, you can see this objectives page as well, but here are the objectives for level F. And so you can see by topic, their numeration, multiplication and division, problem solving, what we're going to be covering for decimals and percents and fractions, measurement. We are going to be covering converting measurements, probability and combination topics, coordinate systems, graphing, and the geometry concepts. So this is what we're going to get to cover in level F. You can use this sheet to check off where your student's at and kind of see what you're working on, where you're heading, and also have this as a record. Okay, in the beginning of your lesson book, there is some really good information. Don't just skip it and go to lesson 1. I'd really encourage you to take some time and read it. It's about 5 pages on how the program was developed, some general thoughts on teaching mathematics, and how the lessons are set up. These 5 pages are from Dr. Cotter, and they are just chock full of some great information. And in the table of contents, you'll see we start off with review, kind of get the cobwebs dusted off, or if you're new to the program, introduce you to the Abacus and some of the ways we're going to be learning this year. There's regular review and games scattered throughout the year. Assessments are quarterly. Enrichment lessons, these are optional. If you are short on time and skip them, the world will not end. However, they are very cool. And so if you can, they are going to be beneficial. Continue on, again, quarterly assessments, reviews and games, and then there's a arithmetic and geometry review and a final assessment. Okay, here's how the lessons are formatted. Everything is laid out for you very well. Up here on the left is the objective, so you know exactly what the goal of this lesson is. Materials, today we're going to need a worksheet. The activities of how to present the lesson are just laid out for you right there on the left. And then any tips or explanations are over here on the right. We start each day with a warm-up so that we're keeping constant review of the concepts we've been learning. Go through our activities, see our tips, and at the end there's a conclusion. Now this conclusion, it might be a summary of the day's lesson, or it'll actually be an expansion to just challenge our kids to think a little deeper about that concept. The lessons are designed to be done one a day, about 30 to 45 minutes per lesson. And then the card games are the review and practice. The quickest way to short circuit the program is to skip the games. There's 150 lessons in the year. These include review lessons in the beginning, periodic review lessons, enrichment lessons, quarterly assessments, and a final assessment. Okay, worksheets. The worksheets are designed to be done independently. Math is a written language, and so the worksheets are part of that process. And so it's here that they're going to just be solidifying the concept they worked on, working on their problem-solving skills, and there's about a worksheet a day. Remember, the card games are where your child's going to get their review and practice. Okay, one more word about the worksheets. You'll see on the copyright page, it says that the publisher hereby grants permission to reproduce the worksheets for a single child's use only. So if you have more children that are going to be using this or twins, you need to buy a second set of worksheets. If you have multiple children, it may end up being cost effective to get an e-workbook. So here you would actually have a downloadable PDF file that you could print off as much as you need for your household's use. Okay, so let's look at this. I've been mentioning games. When there's a game to be played, you'll see it in the materials under the card game book. So on this day, we're actually looking at the patterns that we find in squares and how they work and working on some graphing. You'll see at the end of the lesson is Crazy Squares game. And so here it'll tell you P23. So we'll get out our card game book and go to P23. It'll be under the product or multiplication section, the 23rd game in that section, and it'll have the instructions laid out for you. If you have any questions, give us a call. What is all the deal with games? Isn't my child getting too old for this? It is a huge temptation at this stage to skip the games. But the games are to math the same way books are to reading. They're going to provide that interesting repetition we need to start having an automatic response. And they're going to provide an application for the new information. And so with my oldest, she was my guinea pig, and I did make the mistake of thinking, okay, I can just check off and go to the next lesson. But we paid for it, and we really needed to come back and get that review, because yes, she understood the concept on that day, but I was skipping all of the review and practice that would have made it concrete for her. And then when my youngest, I started seeing these games, I was like, oh, this has been in here the whole time. I just skipped it. And so, so you can learn from my mistake, and with your oldest, not do that. But the games are so helpful. They really replace what in other programs is flashcards and long worksheets. But we have just found that it is a much more efficient and effective way for students and just people in general to internalize these concepts. Remember, 15 minutes of the game is the same as one worksheet. You can play the games that are identified in the lesson. And if you want extra practice and review, you can replay the games you've already played, or get that card game book out, look in the table of contents and pick out the topic you're interested in. You can also keep a game log on what game was played, who played it, the date. And so this may be a place where you can keep notes about games you liked or changes you made, or if you need to keep records for any reason. Okay, one little quick note about the Abacus. If you have been using WriteStart for a long time, this may be a nice time to go get a cup of tea. But for those of you new to WriteStart, you'll notice that in the beginning of this level, especially, and a little bit in other places, we're going to be using an Abacus sometimes. And so some people say, oh, what is an Abacus? I've never used one. And so today I just want to take a couple minutes and show you the basics of how it works, so that when you see those lessons, and again, it's laid out very clearly for you, it'll be no big deal. So this Abacus actually has two sides. And we're only going to be looking at the first side today. But you can see on the second side is where we can use it for 4-digit addition, subtraction, place value, turned upside downs, and we have decimals, tenths, hundredths, and thousands. And so you'll see that in your lessons. But today, let's look at how to use the first side. The Abacus is going to give you a visual and a tactile manipulative that can help your kids get a mental image of their quantities, strategies, mathematical operations. And so here is how we can enter quantities. With our little guys, we say, okay, show me 3 fingers. Yay! And then have them enter 3 on the Abacus. And we really want to encourage it to be 3 all at one time, not just 1, 2, 3. And the reason is we want them to start seeing quantities. This is the symbol for 3. This is actually what 3 is. And it's very important that we understand that difference. So then when we say, okay, show me 7, great. Show me 7 on the Abacus, great. And you'll notice that the 5 lines up with the 5 blue beads, 2 lines up with the 2 yellow beads. And you can see it's 7. There's no counting. Where this gets helpful, and there's our symbol 7, is when we start adding. So when we add 4 and 3 more, oh, I see what that is. It's not just as far as memorizing what these squiggles are and that symbol plus this symbol equals the symbol 7. I can actually see that together they make 7. So then we can start thinking in terms of strategies. So 9 plus 5. Okay, well 9 is so close to 10. What if I gave this bead to make it 10, but I would have to take 1 from the bottom row so that it would stay the same amount? Okay, ready, set, trade. That's 10 and 4 more, it's 14. Okay, what about 9 plus 7? Okay, we have 9 on the first wire, 7 on the second wire. We can do the same thing. And we have 16. Another strategy is the 2-5 strategy. This one's very cool. So 8 on the first wire is 5 and 3. 6 on the second wire is 5 and 1. And so we can see that we have 2 5s is 10 and 4 more, 14. Same thing with 7 plus 5. You just see it. It's right there. We have 10 and 2 more. And so thinking in terms of quantities is just going to help our students really see what they're doing and then be able to expand it. Okay, what about multiplication? 6 times 4. Well, we can see right here, I have 2 groups of 5. There's 10, 20, and the 4 yellow make 24. What about 5 times 7? Same thing, 10, 20, 30. Oh, 35. 7 times 7. Okay, by this point we know that 5 times 5 is 25, 35, 45, 49. Okay, and last one, 9 times 3. Interesting way to think about our 9s is to consider what it would be if we had all 3 wires. So on all 3 wires we have 30 beads, but we don't want these 3 on the end, so 30 minus 3 is 27. Okay, so the abacus is basically a physical manipulative that we need to develop a mental image. And so we're going to start off with a real abacus. They work towards an imaginary abacus, and then finally a mental abacus. And so the imaginary is where the abacus is still in front of them, but maybe they don't touch it. It's just a reminder. And then mental, they have fully internalized the concept and can do this mentally. This is the same for any of the manipulatives. We're going to do the same thing with the fraction chart. For any of the manipulatives that are helping us understand a concept, we're gonna have this process of being able to see and touch and move so that we understand what's going on. The teacher's manual will suggest when to consider using a mental abacus. But listen, if your kid is struggling or counting, use the abacus. Use whatever manipulative we're using at that time so they can keep building that understanding and building that visual memory. Okay, some of the lessons will ask you to get out of the drawing board, T-square, and triangle. You're going to have some geometry lessons that are interspersed throughout the curriculum. These are so cool. They really give a practical use for mathematics. And they help our students to see that arithmetic is just a small part of math. And you'll actually see some kids who, okay, they understand the arithmetic, but maybe they have to work a little harder than others at it. A lot of times you'll see that when you start working with the drawing board or doing any of these geometric concepts, wow, they just see it and get it right away. And it's really important for them to see that arithmetic is math, but it's a small part of math, and that math is patterns and puzzles and more than just arithmetic. And so the geometry lessons are a great way to expose our kids to that. Also, it helps them to learn geometry informally and really have a good foundation before they get into more abstract concepts in high school. It develops coordination. Using that T-square and triangle develops coordination, and this improves with practice. And when they step, if any of your students are interested in architecture, engineering, interior design, you'll notice in college they have their drafting labs and they're using real T-squares and drawing boards just like we're using as a precursor before they ever touch CAD programs. Okay, we saw in the table of contents that there was regular review and practice throughout the year. And so this is what it looks like. You're going to have 2 versions of a worksheet which are similar, but different from each other on whatever the last unit covered. And so you can use them in a lot of different ways. You can use one as a review and practice, one as a review and quiz. You can use one as a quiz 2. A lot of times what I did was I used one as a review. If I could tell, oh, they got this covered, we did not use the second one. If they struggle with something, I said, oh, that's why there's 2 versions. And we'd go over, clear up any misunderstandings, and then the next day use the second version. You'll also notice up here games, because this is review and games. And so they're going to be doing this independently. And so the game part can actually replace the lesson time that you spend with them. And so play these games. That's really, again, going to be that review and practice and the enjoyment for their math this year. Corrections. If there are any corrections, they will be posted online. You can find them here under resources, under teaching support. Come on down to corrections, and then you find your level. Now for level F, there are no corrections yet. When there are, you'll see another blue button here that says level F, and you'll click on it, and it'll show you the date, what page, and what the correction is. And so you can go from there. Some other website treasures. If you go under resources, you'll see pre-recorded webinars. There's lots of other webinars on lots of other topics that are really helpful, and so you may want to peruse that. Also under blog, all kinds of good information. Actually, a lot of different people have written these blogs. All of them have taught Right Start, everything from great ideas about different kinds of games to play, to what to do if you have a struggling learner, what to do if you have multiple children, specific lessons being addressed. All sorts of good information here are in the blog, and so you can kind of search through that or subscribe. One thing to remember as you're teaching this year is that your role is really more questioning than explaining, especially at this level. We really want to encourage that independent thinking and problem-solving skills, and sometimes we just need to have some time to think and be comfortable with wrestling through something and not have to have that immediate answer. And so we want to encourage that. Also, the best motivation for anything is intrinsic. We want to encourage our kids to love learning and be curious and to do their best, and that be something internally that motivates them, and just remembering that external rewards can undermine that. And finally, we just really want to emphasize how important it is that our kids find enjoyment in math. And so we want to just emphasize and point out the patterns and the beauty and just the coolness of the different things that link together. And so how we approach this can just make all the difference. Okay, contact us. This is what the back of the books look like. And you'll see there's our website, phone number, email address. We want you to contact us. If you have any questions, any problems, suggestions, we want to hear from you. And so you can call or email, and we'll see what we can do. Okay.